Greetings, another episode of the Klick Wire. I'm Brad Einerson, your host, and today I've got Simon Smith, digital strategist here at Klick. So today we're going to be talking about just the very first story in the Wire, and if you look below on the page you'll see it. There's three parts to it. It's all about Facebook. So the first part is sponsored searches. So Facebook has opened up the search box to sponsored entries. How can marketers really use this, do you think, to their advantage?
Well, first it's a question of why did Facebook do it? And search is by far the best performing channel online right now in terms of response rates, conversions, and so on. So everybody's trying to be as good as search, and then they'll capture more of the marketing budgets. So I think obviously Facebook's intention here is to try to put in a better performing ad unit that ideally drives towards better metrics. Where the challenge is I don't think that users are using Facebook search the way they use Google search. And so will the performance be the same? Unlikely. So the exact results that advertisers are going to see is still, in my mind, uncertain and unproven until such point as people use Facebook as their universal search tool.
Right. So you might find a large uptake at first because somebody was saying like 3% for the first week, but that's not nearly enough data, right? So you might see that sort of bump and then have it sort of trail down into...
Yeah, or you might continue to see clicks simply because users are used to clicking on results that show up, but that doesn't mean those clicks are going to translate into the kind of actions that advertisers are looking for. So I think that if the goal here is to provide really targeted advertising, then they may have done a good job. But I think that most of the searches, and I'd love to see the data on this, in Facebook are for people or maybe for groups. Right. And whereas in Google the searches are all over the place, and they're usually, I have a problem, I'm going to search for a solution, and your ad shows up and it helps me achieve the result I want. Well, then I'm in the mindset where I'm going to respond to whatever page or offer you take me to. And I just think in Facebook it's not quite clear to me what kind of... I'm sure they'll continue to get a good click-through rate simply because of the placement and the context, but it doesn't mean that advertisers are going to see good ROI.
Fair, very fair. So the second thing we've got in the Facebook section here is page post targeting. So more options. They've updated a couple. In the Wire here, we've got the ones that are pharma interesting, or age and gender, and the interested in keywords. So how do you think that'll help?
Yeah, I think that in terms of targeting, the better targeted you can be, the better. But it's funny because in our world of pharma and health, it's kind of like sometimes being too targeted takes you into territory that now, regulatory, legal are uncomfortable with. So I think the bigger question is going to be who's going to have the guts to actually start to use some of that targeting, and that'll confer an advantage, but also potentially lead to a longer review cycle. So, in our world, there's always that trade-off of if I just do a mass advertisement, maybe that's easier to get through regulatory, but if I start doing a level of targeting that Facebook allows me to, suddenly it makes people uncomfortable. So I think it's a great potential, but who's going to be the pioneer who kind of does it and makes it happen?
So you want to be targeted enough, but not too creepy.
Yeah, or you want to make sure that if your regulatory MRL isn't comfortable with it, then by all means go for it. I think it'll be phenomenal, and I'd love to hear from anybody who wants to give it a shot, because we're always curious to see how these things work, but we know how difficult it can be with a lot of our clients to put ads into that environment in the first place.
Yeah, I could imagine, I'm guessing here, but I could imagine it getting through regulatory maybe a little bit easier, because on Google, I just typed those indication keywords, right? And so there's an obvious linkage between what I typed and what I'm seeing. If the indication keywords are something I typed ages ago when I was putting in my interests, because I don't think they're inferred yet, I don't think Facebook's that advanced, but if I typed them a long time ago, then that linkage may not be as clear to me as a user, I wonder.
Right.
Interesting.
So it's a question of, I mean, there's always that question of just because somebody seems to be interested in cooking, does that mean they're interested in cooking, or they happen to mention something related to cooking at some point? And until we get a better understanding of, what the algorithms are that Facebook's using for that kind of interest level targeting. I think it's mostly a matter of trial and error and seeing what kind of response rates you get. Then you know how well it works for your category, right? I mean, we all know there are certain categories of diseases and conditions that people just aren't talking about in Facebook. Facebook isn't going to tell you if somebody has hemorrhoids because most people aren't talking about it. It's a matter of trying it for your condition you're targeting in the brand and seeing what kind of response you get.
Fair. And the third one is extremely interesting.
Very interesting.
The ad targeting to lists.
Yeah.
So this is where marketers can upload a list of names and email addresses, basically your internal list, maybe from a newsletter or whatever. Upload that. Facebook will match that against their users, I guess using probably email, that's the easiest key. And then you can target messages at them. So how do you think that might pan out?
Yeah, this one for me is of all the offerings that Facebook has put out, a lot of which feels like they're just sort of throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. And some of which may actually offend or their users, such as putting ads into the news feed, and may ultimately lead to undermine usage of the Facebook product itself. This one to me seems like a very compelling offering for advertisers that most companies, most of our clients, and should be comfortable trying, because many of them are already doing CRM programs where they're doing email-based marketing to a list of email addresses. So now we can take that program and we can extend it into the Facebook environment. I think that's very compelling. If you can think about, let's say you wanted to do a sort of a whole program that included email and Facebook, and so somebody comes to your website, converts, signs up for your email program, they get an email blast, and now you're also targeting them in the Facebook environment. I think it's going to allow people to do some very creative, more CRM like executions where they can continue to remarket to the same audience and also time their remarketing activities based on when somebody previously received an email. So, I think it's going to be building out. Whereas we do these programs in email where we have like the first email looks like this, the second one looks like this, the third one may not be an email anymore. Maybe it's starting now to extend into the Facebook environment. So I'm excited to see what kind of creative uses people come up with. And I also think that on Facebook's behalf, that's a type of targeting that you're not really going to find through real-time bidding or any of the ad networks. Nobody else really has that number of email addresses, with the possible exception of Google and Gmail. And I don't see them opening that up anytime soon. So, it's going to raise privacy concerns, but I think from an advertiser standpoint, it's a really unique opportunity.
Great. Well, that's it for this week for Klick Wire. Thank you, Simon, for joining us.
No, thanks a lot. Glad to be here.
Bye for now.